And welcome to our attendees, speakers and panelists at our virtual event, Rebooting Our Visitor Economy in the Central South, brought to you by Business South. Can I firstly thank our partners, without whom this event would not be possible. Our borough councils, Surrey Heath, Waverley and Guildford in Surrey, and Basingstoke and Dean in North Hampshire. I suspect I was asked to host this afternoon because I run a 3-bedroomed bed and breakfast in Surrey, and rebooting the visitor economy is rather important to me, as I know it is to many of you. After a whole year without guests, it's been so weird missing all our guests. A couple of housekeeping points. As you've probably seen, the event is being recorded and will be available on the Business South YouTube channel. Do chat on Twitter at Business South and follow us on LinkedIn. You can also chat on the chat button and follow us on LinkedIn. And I would really encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A button. If I can't get through them all before the time is up, we'll make sure we'll respond to you after the event. And finally, I assume you all know where the toilets are. So we only have an hour, so let's get started. This event is in 2 parts. We have 3 speakers followed by a panel session where those 3 speakers will be joined by 2 further excellent panelists. So you're getting 5 for the price of 1 hour today, just 1 hour of your time, be well spent. So first of all, can I introduce you to our first speaker, Danny Picorelli, Managing Director of Exclusive Collection. Exclusive Collection is the name, the company name of 6 family-run independent country house properties, 2 spas, golf club, cookery school, inn, and award-winning restaurants. The 2 that I know best and have frequented are Pennyhill Park in Surrey and South Lodge in Horsham. I love them both. Danny is also actively involved in the wider hospitality industry and was last year chairman of the Master Inholders, and he was voted Hotelier of the Year in 2014 by the Caterer. So over to you, Danny.
Rosemary, thank you so much for that introduction. You've stolen most of my opening gambit, but I just want to explain a little bit about the background and the ethos of us as a group. And we don't really see ourselves as a hotel group. We see ourselves as providing experiences for people. We have 6 hotels, 2 spas, 1 cookery school, 1 golf course, 1 pub, 2 Michelin-starred restaurants, amongst many, many things. And I just want to give you a couple of examples of experiences that you can have with us. So on the top left of the screen is Lainston House, a beautiful William and Mary building just outside of Winchester. You could stay at Lainston in a hot tub suite. You could use the cookery school, doing a Weber barbecue course, and then eat in a wood-fired restaurant. Or Pennyhill, top right of the screen, we have fantastic spa. So you could have 2 nights, 1 in the hyperlocal restaurant, 1 in a Michelin-starred restaurant, and then spend the day in the spa. Or the Manor House down in Castle Combe, you could play golf on a championship golf course and eat 1 night in the pub that we own in a 13th century village, and be staying in a cottage, which is one of the original cottages from, it was in the film Dr. Dolittle. So we really try and curate stays around not being transactional, but being very, very experience-led. I'm going to talk a little bit about this, where I've warned the guys on the panel before. I'm going to feel like I'm going a bit off piste, but it does link very much back in. I'm really personally very, very passionate on purpose-led businesses, on businesses that are really focus on sustainability. And particularly as a hotelier, I think I've got a wonderful example to do that. So very quickly, the current model is we take something, be it petrol out the ground, or oil out the ground, we make something into petrol and then we waste it. Or we take a mineral resource, stick it in a phone, use the phone for a few years and chuck it away. And I think that what we are trying to do at Exclusive is make that purpose really look at everything we do and how we can design our product to reduce waste, to take waste out of it, to use sustainable materials, to understand the impact of absolutely everything we do. So how does this link in today? Well, a number of ways. 70% of the world's food is either imported or exported. But to me, the visitor economy is wider than people think of hotels, bed and breakfast, visitor attractions. It's much, much wider than that. And we want to integrate into the local economy. And by doing that, we are being more sustainable in a number of ways that I'll talk about, but also we are helping the local economy and we're helping ourselves because our brand proposition becomes much stronger. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. We have spent a lot of time during lockdown looking at reinventing the product, for want of a better word. And this is one of our restaurants at Pennyhill Park. It was called the Ascot Bar, but we've been working in partnership with Surrey Hills. And Surrey Hills is obviously a well-known area of outstanding natural beauty, but also on top of that, it has some really incredible producers. So to give you an example, and on the screenshot is a bit of our marketing collateral. We partner with Bramble Farm turkeys. Turkeys aren't just at Christmas. Norbury Farm cheese. And not only do we buy their cheese, we take the whey, which is a byproduct, and use it in our pastry because it's a commonly used ingredient in pastry. We work with the Surrey Hills butchers. We work with Hill House Farm, a fantastic farm, and I'll talk a little bit about him in a second, but we get a lot of pork, some beef, some veg. As one example, he is right next door to a dairy. We order cream from the dairy. They share that van together. So we're working with two producers and they're working together to help us. And the cream goes into our desserts on the menu. It's Surrey cream. Not only are we reducing food miles, we are also they're sharing. So we're doubly reducing food miles. This is a new restaurant that we just opened at Lainston House. Lainston House is Winchester, just outside Winchester near Sparsholt. And Hampshire is a fantastic county for food. So we have partnered with a lot of the local producers, and we have, because we run it's based in a cookery school, the restaurant in the evening, we put wood-fired ovens into the cookery school, but we also have wood-fired ovens in our kitchen garden and specialize in cookery classes that are wood-fired, barbecue-led, fire pits, as well as running cookery courses that are very conventional, you know, baking a great bread or just basic knife skills, all of that good stuff. So some of the producers that we partner with, there are Isle of Wight tomatoes, River Test trout, River Test watercress, which is fantastic. Some amazing cheeses in Hampshire, Lyburn cheese, Tunworth cheese, pork and lamb from local farms, all butchered at Uptons of Bassett. Lots of local fish. We make our own apple juice, or we use the local producers. We pick our own apples from our wonderful kitchen garden, and we are also this year partnering with a local producer to make apple a champagne cider. So we're making a sparkling cider. It's just some shots of the kitchen garden, and they really are working kitchen gardens. And we do some really good, we incorporate it into all sorts of products. So even our meeting products, you can come in an evening and we do a pick your own Pimm's cocktail reception. So you can pick mint, pick strawberries, and just have a wonderful experience that way. Hill House Farm, which I mentioned earlier, just wanted to talk about some of this, some of the benefits of it. So not only does he share his trucks, we also have shorter distances because he's based in Surrey Hills. And I just want to give you one example. By using a local producer, the UK bacon supply, a lot of the pigs in the UK, even if it's British pork, it isn't always British pork. It comes from the Netherlands or Belgium. And even if it is British pork, quite often it's taken 100, 200 miles to an abattoir. Then the abattoir takes it to the factory where they cure the bacon. That can be another 200 miles. Then they take that cured bacon to the wholesalers, to the distributors, and then it could be another 200 miles back again. Whereas Ian will cure his bacon on site, and the food miles are absolutely minimal. So the sort of distribution model of lorries going everywhere, we want to make it just specific to, in these two cases, Surrey and Hampshire. And we know that 90% of our food produce, we're aiming for 90% of our food produce to come from Surrey and Hampshire. Some things you can't do. If you want a good risotto, you can't buy risotto rice from England. I have to get that from Italy. There's nothing wrong with that. So you've also got to be clear when, if you're being authentic, but you're also clear when you can't get a product from somewhere else. And even down to the micro detail, this is how we work with Ian. One of the problems farmers have, or local producers have, is everybody wants bacon. People want crackling joints, but he needs to sell a whole animal. So we sat down with him and worked with him on how to use everything. So some examples, we do a pork terrine starter in Hillfield at Penny Hill. So that uses hocks and the belly. We do pork chops as a main course. We do sausages and bacon for breakfast. Sausages are great for using all the cheaper cuts. Porchetta Sunday roast is loin, and I could go on. There's more. We do a ham hock dish. So there's more dishes, but that way Ian doesn't have any wastage. We don't have any wastage. It's good for the local economy. It's good for us because our food cost goes down by using the whole animal, and it's great for Ian. Everyone talks about food miles, but I also just want to talk a little bit about drinks. And this is Penny Hill. So we work with Nordic Wellness, who make a fantastic kefir based in Woking. We work with the Gin Kitchen in Dorking, and we actually do an own brand gin that uses nettles from Penny Hill Park. Ripping Yarns Distillery, they make a fantastic rum. They're based in Whitley, about a mile from where I live, so I tend to pick up a few bottles and drop it off to the hotels, although they don't all quite make it to the hotels. And we partner with South Downs Water because that's right next to South Lodge. South Downs begins at South Lodge effectively and ends at Lainston. So we use that. And here's some of the partnerships we have at Lainston. So I know Amy from Bombay Sapphire is talking in a bit. We have a double partnership. Bombay Sapphire is one of our house pouring brands across the whole group, but also when we have corporate groups, we recommend the Bombay Sapphire as a visitor attraction. So it's true sort of partnerships on that. Flower Pots Brewery is fantastic brewery, Gorilla Spirits. They're making a vodka for us. And still some of the overlap because the Ridgeview and the South Downs Water. So what are the benefits? You know, sustainability and profitability are compatible, you know, and for us, it's a 3P model: people, planet, profit. Profit isn't a dirty word, but and by people, I don't just mean our teams are more engaged, but our relationships in the local communities are more engaged. Because if you work for the Gorilla Spirit Company, you're more likely to recommend Lainston. You're more likely to come. We're providing, hopefully, helping with employment. So it really is a win-win, and we feel like we're doing good with the planet at the same time. I want to talk really quickly about our meeting room product, because our business is 40% leisure, 40, so that's upscale leisure, anniversaries, special occasions. It's 40% MICE. I hate using hotel speak, but meetings, incentives, conference and events. So basically conferencing and people getting together. So even in our meeting product, we look at what we're putting in, how can we partner with people for local attractions. So Bombay Sapphire I mentioned earlier, but also the physical product. This is some of the pencils. We've been through 3 iterations of pencils. Originally we had CDs, reused CDs were pencils, and now we use wooden sprout pencils that when you've used them, you get seeds in the end and you can plant the seeds. And obviously our food offering overlaps completely. So the food offering I've been talking about sits with our conferencing. And, you know, if you've got a Hampshire-based company coming down and then we're presenting them with a pea shoot martini, the pea shoots have been picked from the kitchen garden, the vodka or the gin has come from a local person. That's a wonderful story and really, really engages people. So thank you for listening. I think I've overshot my time slot by about a minute. My apologies for everyone else following, and hopefully speak to some of you at the end.
Thank you, Danny. That's your extra minute doesn't make any difference because it was so fantastic. Interestingly enough, I organised a street market in our town last Saturday. We had Hill House Farm, we had Pep from Nordic Wellness Kefir. We had the 2 lads from Ripping Yarns. They were so young and their rum was the best seller. But do you know that our high street footfall, we were lucky enough to have a footfall counter, went up 26.9% on the previous Saturday. That's the difference it makes. People want these local products. So
absolutely.
It's really great to see it at such a top hotel. Thank you. Anyway, we'll speak to you later. So now we're moving on to Amy. Amy worked for the National Trust before she got into the distillery world. She's been with Bombay Sapphire for 5 years, and her responsibilities, I noticed, Amy, include Dewar's Distillery in Aberfeldy, which I know very well because I had a business in Blairgowrie just along the road.
Oh, fantastic.
I visited it.
Oh, so brilliant. I've got my Highland cow just behind me to sort of remind me of Scotland whilst I'm still based here. And
we've got Highland cows in Cranley, again, local butchers. So I don't have to go far to feel at home. Thank you, Amy.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, let me just first start off by saying a huge thank you to Business South for inviting us to be part of today. We're very honoured to be on this panel. So I'm going to take you on a little gin journey to the Bombay Sapphire Distillery. Hopefully by the end of it, you'll all be absolutely gasping for a long cool gin and tonic, if you aren't already, on this hot summer's day. So Bombay Sapphire Gin is one of the world's most recognised gin brands. But the brand was actually launched in 1987. It was the mastermind of an incredibly talented man called Michel Roux. Probably not the Michel Roux you're thinking of, as probably a slightly older Michel Roux. He basically came up with the concept of adapting an older recipe. So Bombay Dry Gin was launched in the 1960s. This is Alan Subin, the creator of Bombay Dry Gin. And what Michel Roux did was took the basis of this gin and he added some additional botanicals to make the flavour profile a bit more balanced. But significantly, he put it in the blue bottle, which then sort of soon became quite iconic. And it's widely asserted that Bombay Sapphire gin is actually the gin that sort of relaunched the gin renaissance and pulled people's focuses away from vodka and back onto gin. So all these little sort of pop-up craft gins and new distilleries that we're seeing right now, many people believe that Bombay Sapphire almost sort of started that trend originally. But Bombay Sapphire gin was originally made in Warrington back to sort of the 1700s. It was the basis of the recipe was made in Warrington. But the Picardi family decided that there was value in showing the world the craft and the production processes that make Bombay Sapphire gin the way it is. So production was moved to Laverstoke, near Basingstoke, in 2014. And the Bombay Sapphire distillery was opened up to the public so people could go and visit and see it. The bit that I'm interested in is the fact that in a normal year, not in COVID years, in a normal year, we do host about 100,000 visitors on site. But we also make every single drop of Bombay Sapphire gin for the whole world. So wherever you are, Australia, Africa, anywhere, it's all made right here in Hampshire, which is quite exciting. So Laverstoke was chosen as the site where Bombay Sapphire gin should be distilled, mostly because of its beautiful location, but also because it has some really fascinating heritage. So the site itself actually dates back over 1,000 years. A mill on that particular location was listed in the Domesday Book of 1086. And as you can see, the river runs right through the middle of it. So mills have been on that site for many, many centuries. It passed through the ownership of King Henry VIII, but eventually in 1719, it was turned into a paper mill by Henry Portal, who was the first in a long line of Portals to produce banknote paper on the site. Henry Portal and his family were actually responsible for making all the banknotes for the Bank of England and the British Empire. So quite a big job and quite a big responsibility. Unfortunately, though, all good things do come to an end. And in the 1960s, paper production stopped, and the mill was actually fairly unloved for about 50 years. It was built upon, it was subcontracted out, it was generally made a mess of, and the gorgeous river that runs right through the middle of it was completely bricked over. No wildlife, no nothing. So then Bacardi bought the site and realised the huge potential it had to offer. Firstly, in terms of its gorgeous countryside location, but also its fantastic access to London for people coming out of London and visiting the distillery, to Winchester as well for people coming out from Winchester, and its access to the A34 for transportation of gin, essentially, so that we could sort of be the production centre and move the gin all around the country. So Bacardi partnered with Heatherwick Studios to turn this abandoned paper mill into a world-class visitor attraction and distillery. So Heatherwick Studios helped us to design the tour route, but most importantly, they built these iconic glass houses as kind of the centerpiece of the distillery to grow examples of the botanicals that go into Bombay Sapphire gin. So guests can understand that full process, right from kind of growth and the environments that the botanicals grow in and their growing conditions, through to kind of how they smell, how they look, how you can sort of touch them, and then see the production process and see how these botanicals are being physically made into gin. So when you visit us, you learn about the history of gin, the history of Bombay Sapphire, but you also learn about the production processes and the botanicals that are used and the places they grow and how they impact the flavour of the gin. Now we had a lovely shout out from Danny earlier, but I'd say that one of the things that we're most proud of as a company is the partnerships that we've been able to make with local places, from super premium gorgeous hotels right through to sort of our very local B&Bs and local restaurants. We're pretty proud of the impact we've been able to have on the area in terms of renovating the sites, employing local people, and kind of bringing a bit of life back into the town of Whitchurch, and sort of taking something that was derelict and not being used into something that can be enjoyed by everyone. And yeah, I think that's been something that we're continuing to work on, and something we're really, really proud of. And in terms of our location, apologies for the slightly sort of crude Google Maps, but we are right in Whitchurch, sort of 15 minutes away from Basingstoke, and only about 40 minutes north of Southampton and 20 minutes north of Winchester. So actually, if you're visiting us from Lainston House, we're only 15 minutes up the road. So great to do those two as a partnership. We're currently offering fully guided discovery tours of the distillery, and we're also offering gin cocktail masterclasses, which is where you can essentially do a fully guided tour, have a cocktail at the end, and then go into a masterclass bar with a gin expert and make a couple of cocktails, hear a bit about the bar trade, hear a bit about how to make really, really good cocktails at home. That's one of our most popular products, and very, very popular at the moment. And we also, not surprisingly, have a fantastic bar and lovely cafe and shop on site as well. And then just to finish off, we're also an events venue, so anything from conferences to private parties to wedding receptions, and even just bespoke private masterclasses. We've got options to suit any sort of events, anything that you can think of, and we do partner with our local hotels in the vicinity for corporate events as well. So if you've been to visit us before, thank you, and we hope to see you again soon, and if not, we hope to see you on a tour in the near future. Lovely, thank you.
Extraordinary. Thank you, Amy. That was fascinating. I must admit I haven't been, but you've really encouraged me to well, I like whiskey, I like gin. What more is there to? Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you again. We're running a little behind in time, but don't worry, these sessions are so interesting. So a quick intro to Richard Nichols. We're delighted to have Richard from Visit Britain, Head of Research. He's going to be telling us some fantastic data about what's going on, I hope. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks very much, Rosemary. I'm sharing my screen. Is it working? Is that showing for
Yes,
people?
Eddie.
Great, okay. So thanks very much for having me, and good afternoon, everyone. My role today is to provide the numbers and the research. So an overview of Central South visitor economy across both the inbound, which is what I primarily look at Visit Britain, and then domestic, my colleagues at Visit England. I'm going to be running you through some of the numbers, what the visitor economy looked like in normal times, some of our latest sentiment research, how people are feeling about travelling again, a couple of forecasts, and then a little bit about what Visit Britain, Visit England have been doing. So I'm going to start you off with the domestic tourism landscape first. So this is what it looked like pre-pandemic to the Central South. I'm starting off here with these tables show the overnight tourism, total, holidays, business. There are some other components as well, but I didn't want to overload the slide. In total, across the overnight and tourism day trips, it's almost 28 million visitor nights on average per year, and almost £5 billion in spend. A majority of that is actually on the day trips, on the leisure day trips. For most counties, overnights actually forms a minority of that. If you look at the holidays versus business split, for most counties, it tends to be that holidays provide a higher value of spending. So that's the third column in each table. But interestingly, Surrey is the exception there, with 59 billion spent by business overnight visitors and 41 by overnight holiday visitors. Hopefully these slides will be able to be sent out to delegates afterwards, as I don't want to rattle through every single number that I've got here. And then looking at the day trips, this is overnight, and then the day visits, the tourism day visits there. As I said, the value of day visits is actually much higher than the value of overnights. That's where the bulk of tourism value actually is. Taking a look at our domestic sentiment research now. So we've been conducting some sentiment amongst domestic tourists every 2 weeks for the last year and a bit. And this is just one of the questions from this research: where in the UK are you likely to stay on your next trip. So looking at those planning a visit in summer and in autumn, where in the UK are they likely to go? South Central is of course split between the Southwest and the Southeast, so there's a bit of overlap there, but we asked the research agency to specifically pull out that region there. In terms of the summer period, it's the Southwest in total which leads by a long, long way. For autumn, it's a little bit more level. You can see Scotland almost up there with the Southwest for autumn intent. There's a substantial document with our sentiment research on it on our website. It's being released every couple of weeks at the moment. Please do check that out. Just looking at one other question in the domestic sentiment research, I've been tracking what we call the appetite for risk. So how do people feel about going on different activities? This has been ticking up despite the increase in cases that we've seen in COVID cases. The appetite for risk has increased a little bit. So you'll see traveling by public transport up to from 2.2 on the scale to 2.5 on the scale of 1 to 4. Other activity types fairly similar, including some of those where we had seen very low levels of confidence in the activity. So that has been creeping up the propensity to do different activities. In general, short-term confidence in the survey in taking a UK overnight trip in the summer has also been increasing. That's not shown on this particular chart. I'm going to turn now to the inbound metrics. So this comes from the International Passenger Survey 2019 results, the pre-pandemic picture. In total, in that year, 2.2 million inbound visits to the region, just over 14 million nights, and almost £1 billion in spending. I split it out there by the 4 counties for you there. I won't go through all that in detail, but taking a look at the journey purpose. On our website, you can look at the county level data or the regional level data and split it out by many, many different metrics. I've just pulled out a few for you here. And this is a journey purpose mix. You can see that there's quite actually a big difference in the journey purpose mix of inbound visitors to the region. VFR, visiting friends and relatives, is much larger in terms of the total spend for this region than the UK total. UK total is the right-hand column in the light blue, and the South Central counties, the other 4 colours there, rising up to 47% for Surrey. Holidays, a little bit lower than the UK total here, but quite different if you look at, for example, Dorset and West Sussex, where it's much higher than Surrey, for example. Business, they're in the second column, that varies a fair bit. So Dorset much lower, Hampshire, Surrey and West Sussex in line with the UK total. If we look at the top inbound visitor markets to the region, I've combined the last 3 full years of data to the 4 different counties. The US is the top in terms of the total number of visits. That does reflect the national picture as well, followed by France, Germany and Spain. If you look at holidays, it's a little bit different. Actually, holidays, Germany rises to the top just ahead of the US. So the emerging markets tend to be a bit lower down the list for visits. They tend to be a bit higher for the value of spending. I haven't shown that data because the data can get a little bit kind of bumpy and not particularly robust for some of these countries that have small visit numbers, but relatively large values of spending, like China, for example. But in the main, it's the established markets where we see the biggest volumes. Now, we've got an enormous report on inbound sentiment. It's well over 100 slides long on our website for you to look at your leisure. I've just picked out a couple of slides from here. One of the questions that we asked was which destination, which country would you intend to go to on your next international trip? So we did this sentiment research in the previous wave in 20 markets, and it's the sample there was international travelers, so those who go on international trips at least sometimes. It's primarily focused on the leisure market. This is the short haul markets here, so European respondents. Britain tends to kind of fall in about the halfway down the top 10 for most. There is a bit of a variation there. You can see, unsurprisingly, Irish Republic. Britain is more top of mind. In some countries, we're rather less so. It does tend to be Spain leading in most cases, or Italy, France in some cases, in terms of the intent for the next trip. If we look at the long-haul markets, Britain does tend to be a bit more top of mind here. So perhaps the challenge here is to get them travelling long haul in the first place. If they are minded to do that, then Britain does come towards the top of the mix for the likes of Australia, Britain #1, China, Canada #2, USA #3. So Britain a little bit more top of mind within Europe for long haul visitor markets. In general, we found in our sentiment research, we conducted a wave back last December and then a wave in spring. There was quite high levels of intent to go on a trip at some point in the next 12 months. Obviously, you know, the Delta variant has happened between now and then. We're going back into field in a few weeks' time to get another dip to test inbound sentiment. But we did find that the levels of intent to go on an international trip as soon as you could were fairly high in most markets. I'm going to touch on a couple of forecasts now. So looking first at the inbound visitor spend forecast. Pre-pandemic, the inbound visitor economy, this was for the total UK, was worth around 28.5 billion. That fell to 6.2 billion in 2020, the vast majority of which was, of course, at the start of the year. In 2021, this comes from Oxford Economics and their forecast. They do long-term forecasts, and they're predicting slight increase. However, their forecast is a couple of months old now, so it's actually likely to be below even that 6.2 billion in 2021 when they next do their forecast update. Likely to take a few years for international tourism value and volume to reach its pre-pandemic level. Oxford Economics reckon until 2024, if you take inflation into account, perhaps 2025, and the way things will be going with Delta variant, we might push this back a little bit further. So it'll take a few years for us to get back to where we were. For domestic, a sharper recovery. So we didn't fall quite as far. And actually their next forecast for, and indeed ours for 2021 is likely to be an upgrade due to the substitution from outbound to domestic. So domestic perhaps recovering a little bit faster in the short term than these numbers indicate. Okay, a busy slide here with lots of numbers, but if you look at if you just concentrate on the color coding, you can see what's going on. This data comes from flight bookings. So a company called Forward Keys aggregates bookings that have been made across different flight portals, both indirect and direct portals. And the numbers here index the number of flight bookings made to the UK in each week back to the pre-pandemic picture, so back a couple of years. And what we've seen in recent weeks is it's ticked up slightly, but still at very, very low levels, going up to about -83% in the most recent week of data, the most positive week that we've seen in 2021. And you can see North America showing a higher than average rate of booking. So picking back up in some parts of the world a bit more than others. North America and as well as Europe, we are identifying as the region that is likely to recover in inbound terms sooner rather than some of the other parts of the world, so Asia, Oceania, so Australia, for example, which are likely to recover rather later. So for more on all of that, please do refer to our website. Apologies if this is all a bit rushed. I've tried to cram in a few tidbits from each of our main sources. But if you follow those links for our inbound sentiment and our domestic sentiment and the hard stats and our forecast, there's much, much more there. If I've got time, if I'm not running out, Rosemary, I just wanted to have a couple of slides on what Visit Britain, Visit England are doing in terms of our activity. So on the Visit England side, we're doing a lot of industry support for the English tourism industry to build resilience, whether this is through our business advice hub or our series of business recovery webinars and business support roadshows. And I'm sure you're familiar with the We're Good to Go industry standard that we launched last year to help businesses adhere to COVID guidelines and demonstrate that they were ready to open for business again. At the moment, we are focusing heavily, of course, on domestic marketing rather than inbound. So our flagship campaign is Escape the Everyday. aims to build demand and generate bookings in the short term. Our paid campaign is focusing firstly on driving travel to cities, which do seem to have suffered disproportionately in the data, but it is designed to support all parts of the country with a flexible toolkit for destinations and businesses. And then later in the financial year, so probably next calendar year, early 2022, we will launch a new tourism campaign with our partners in government in the Great Delivery campaign to re-stimulate international demand and help international trade switch back on for 2022. Okay, I hope I haven't shot over time too badly.
Not at all. Not at all. Your stats rather brought me down to earth a bit. One can't help but feel incredibly pessimistic. I'll come back and ask you some questions later on about those. So we're going to have a session now with our three speakers are going to be joined by two additional panelists. We're delighted to say that we have Fran Downton, Chief Executive of Tourism Southeast, our local Visit Britain, I suppose you would call that organisation, and Gareth Rogers, the Chief Executive of Farnborough International Limited, Conference Centre and other activities. Perhaps I could just ask Fran first and then Gareth just to say a few words about yourselves before I launch into the open panel session. Fran?
Thank you, Rosemary, and yeah, thank you for inviting us today. Pleasure to be here. As Rosemary mentioned, we are the regional destination management organisation for the Southeast, really here to support and grow visitor economy really through the Southeast. So very much engaged with many of you speaking today. So yeah, pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And Gareth?
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Gareth Rogers. I'm the Chief Executive of Farnborough International. So whilst we are well known for our world famous air show that happens sort of every 2 years, probably more relevant to this conversation, as you can sort of see behind me, is our sort of newly built conference and exhibition centre that opened in 2018 and responsible for bringing sort of hundreds of thousands of people to Hampshire that hadn't traditionally been to Hampshire, and therefore relevant to both the business side and visitor side of this, because we both run visitor, I would say commercial shows, but also trade shows as well as consumer shows. And you know, delighted to be joining you and happy to answer any questions of how we can help and how we see and view the economy that we run through.
Thank you, Gareth. Don't mute yourself yet, because I'm going to ask you a specific question. I run a B&B and I find that visitors to events, local exhibitions, outdoor events, indoor events is absolutely critical to my business. When do you think we're going to see large events really kicking off again?
Despite the government trying to do everything they can to stop large events, as it seems, there is an appetite for them. We hosted two exhibitions over the last couple of weeks, and we reached our visitor limit that we were allowed to reach, okay, albeit on the stage 3 of the opening. But I believe there is a real appetite for them. Now, I temper that by saying that the appetite is as long as they are national events and not international events. I think that international events are probably some way off as yet, but national events, there is definitely an appetite to go there. I mean, you only need to see ticket sales in events that are happening around the UK, and you know, we have the British Motor Show happening here in a few weeks. You know, ticket sales are going well, and people want to go and do things. They have been stuck inside or in their gardens for a long time, and people want to get out. And I think that is very much the case of both consumer and business events, is people want to see face to face. And I'm a firm believer that you cannot replace face-to-face events, albeit we're sat here virtually today. But you know, you can't replace them. And you know, whilst this may supplement what goes on, people want to see people. They want to go to things. They want to touch. They want to feel things. You know, albeit not necessarily with their hands and mouths at the moment. But certainly that they will be out in their numbers, and I think that they'll resume quicker than most people think they will.
Thank you, Gareth. I'm right behind you. We're all behind you. We all want to be seeing each other. We don't really want to be here behind screens. There's so many questions I would like to ask you individually over a coffee, and I can't do that. Fran, you've heard the speakers, and there was a huge focus on the importance of food and drink to our economy. What are you hearing at South East England about our local food and drink offer?
Oh, it's really, really important, and becoming increasingly so, I would say. We saw the trend happening very much beforehand, before kind of pandemic, but actually propelled forward very much so now is the need to look at all of our tourism businesses and look at the experiences we're offering people. Experiential travel, bit of a buzzword, but it is actually at the forefront of the visitor economy, I think, when people are choosing and looking for what they want to do. And again, I know the Visit Britain sentiment tracker, along our own research, is suggesting that people's choices are maybe a little bit different to what they were, but people are very much looking for kind of smaller experiences. Safety, caution might be at the forefront at the moment, but they really are looking for something authentic experience, and the food and drink play an enormous part of that in keeping things authentic, local, and yeah, it's what people are looking for.
Thank you. Danny, you haven't got your face up, but can I ask you the question about, it's really marvellous to see all these local food and drinks being offered, but do you think that your customers are actually choosing you because of that? Or is it just a fantastic bonus when they get there, then when they leave, they're really on side, as it were?
I think it's some and some. I think what Fran just said about people want an authentic experience, and if you know that whole education piece of our team, and you can, I think when you go somewhere you can tell whether it's authentic or greenwashing or so yeah, it's some and some. Some people come and get blown away by it, other people actively seek it out.
What surprised me or pleased me at the street market I held last week was that the food and the drink is naturally more expensive, and I think our customers have to understand that, but it didn't seem to matter to them. It really didn't seem to matter. They were prepared to pay that extra for the quality and the taste, and that really is encouraging. And they did understand, when I spoke to them, they did understand the food miles issue. It was becoming more and more important to them. Okay, as I carry on with questions, for Richard at Visit Britain, what are the future plans to market the UK internationally for inbound business and leisure?
Yeah, so at the moment, we've been more concentrating on the domestic marketing, but we are planning a big push on international markets in early 2022. So we're focusing, we think, on North America and Europe are the regions where we're likely to see greater propensity to travel in the short term. So we'll be using our partners in government on the great branding, which is where we get most of our marketing budget from, to do a new brand campaign there. So that's in progress at the moment. And certainly, so that's on the leisure side, and certainly we haven't forgotten about business either. So actually, by whoever put that one on, I'd be very happy to put you in touch with my colleague Karen McPhee, who heads up our business events team, and she can tell you about our plans for promoting business. Okay,
so team, perhaps you can take a note of that and pick that up. Perhaps we could move on to a skills question, which I have here. Because we hear all the news, every day about the difficulty skills-wise for every business actually, but our visitor economy is so reliant on the hospitality sector. Perhaps I could go around you all and start with maybe Amy. Amy, tell me about your skills issues.
Yeah, it has been a challenge because obviously it's not just a case of get some temporary staff and stick them behind the bar. They need to learn quite a complex cocktail menu. They need to learn tour scripts. They need to learn that there's a huge amount of knowledge and training that goes into all of the staff that we have. And coupled with the fact that our current occupancy, we were sort of discussing this a bit before the call started, our current occupancy is about 95% of the tickets available. So we're really, really, really busy. And it has been a challenge to get enough staff to be able to run the show, especially with the current situation with isolations and the impact that has on the business. So I'd certainly say that we've seen a huge impact from the shortage in skills.
Gareth, you're in the events business, and I was served the other day in the Holiday Inn in Guildford by a lovely lady, graduate events manager for quite a large company, making beds and serving. And she said, I think I'll create a new career in this, she said, because I don't think things will ever get back to events. Some comments from you about events and staff?
Yeah, it's certainly been an issue that's hit the event industry hard. Certainly mass scale events. One of the more non-talked about is the security sector. You know, a lot of people have reached out because ultimately mass scale events have not taken place for such a long time in the UK that people have just taken the view of moving away from industry. In one of the comments that's come throughout all of the people has been about experiential customer service, and I think that is becoming more and more in whether you're running a trade show, a mass event, whatever it might be. And I think that's where we are going to be hardest hit, is people are expecting more and more and more. And you certainly hear from people like Danny and Amy what they've talked about in terms of what they're providing. But actually, as rightly as Amy spoke about, in order to provide more, you've got to give them more skills. You've got to expect that there's training that goes behind it. And I think that'll be one of the issues is, are people prepared to maybe understand that what industry I have faced? And I'm not sure they will be. So it really is going to be a challenge. But one of the other challenges I think we may face is that as people move away from what has probably been an industry that people fell into through their careers. I know I speak to a lot of people that they didn't necessarily set out to enter, events and those sort of things, but sort of fell into hospitality or whatever it might be, is that we may find that wages have to rise in order to be able to attract people back into that industry. And at the moment, we are an industry that's not made any profit for a long, long time. And therefore, whether we're able to cope and deal with that, I'll be intrigued to see. And it's not something that we can say for certainty will happen, but I'm intrigued to understand how that will unwind over the next sort of probably 2 years as we get back to pre-pandemic levels.
Indeed, and we have seen some very large price increases. I'm 40 minutes from Brighton, and I'm getting guests who are prepared to travel to Brighton and stay with me because B&Bs are charging £300, would you believe, in Brighton. It is really upsetting, and that's not the way around it. But perhaps I'll ask a larger business question and a smaller business question of Fran. So first of all, it's slightly larger. Well, it is a larger business, the exclusive group. Danny, and what's happening staff-wise with you?
So it is a huge challenge, and it's a combination. It's a perfect storm, and that Brexit, we can't ignore that. Brexit has taken away some really fantastic people from our industry, and that's been exacerbated by COVID and people on furlough going home and then making life choices. I think the government's positioning of the value they hold certain industries in, a lot of people who could have worked in events or hotels or in the wider hospitality have gone into, become Amazon drivers because the government have forced employment into certain areas. And it's a whole separate debate about tax and all of that good stuff. But I also think it's beholden on us as employers to adapt and to change our proposition. We're looking at we're by November we'll be real living wage employers. We are investing even more in our training and our sort of brand, our people brand proposition. So we have to make it work. We have to change our model. And I think those employers that have the strongest offering for our people will still do well. I employed 16 chefs on a we've been running a chefs academy. So every year we employ 12 chefs a year, and we invest tens and tens of thousands of pounds in training. I've now got 70 people in my business at chefs that come through that chefs academy. We've upped the numbers this year just to attract them. So you know, it is tough, it's brutally tough, but it's beholden on us to do something about it and make it a better proposition with pay, learning and development, environment, and that there isn't the free-flowing labour for those that had a rubbish proposition before.
Thanks, Danny. Fran, I know that you have a lot of small businesses, family businesses in your tourist sector. What's the feedback from them?
It really does echo everything that's just been said around the table. Like Amy said, and Amy and Bombay Sapphire is a reasonable size, you know, a business. So for those that are down the lower end of the scale, the lifestyle businesses, the B&Bs, it really is only taking one track and trace thing to close them down at the moment. So that is a common story that we are hearing on a daily, if not hourly basis at the moment. So it is a real challenge on the back of a sector that has been incredibly hard hit already. I think what we do need to recognise, and Danny said there, a perfect storm. This is actually quite a complex layering of different issues that have all come to head at once. There's, you know, as Danny mentioned, it's not just COVID. There's the furlough scheme. We've lost business employees to different sectors. We have transitioned a furlough scheme, and then if you layer in Brexit, that would have been nice to maybe have run at in its own right, it is now kind of just the kind of cherry on top of all that. It's real. It's become a little bit, I would say, of a crisis. It's not an easy solution either. There's no quick win with this. There is no sticking plaster that we can put over this at the moment. What is a worry, I think, for businesses on what we know could be a peak domestic year for us, with the ability, and the sun is out, the weather's or everything is kind of perfectly aligning on that front, to know that we might not deliver that experience that we want to in order to maximise this opportunity, is a little bit worrying. What is happening, however, on a kind of regional, national basis is it's not gone unrecognised. There's been a lot of lobbying to make sure that obviously at national level, at government level, it's not going missed. What I would say is that, as Danny mentioned, it is viewed very much as a sector specific that we do need to maybe take control of and own in our own right. Government aren't going to step in and provide all the answers to this, particularly because obviously there's been a huge, and has been for a long time, a huge STEM agenda. That is the area that is very much a longer term objective of the government. So this is a short term issue, is not going to be addressed in any big government funded way. So we do need to take ownership of it. We have been talking there, when we're working with Visit Britain, we're working with the Tourism Management Institute to pull this together, so we don't all run at it in different ways and scattergun. We will kind of support and pull this together so it's a very much Visit Britain are looking at this. It is happening, and we'll put support measures in how we can actually long term make this industry as attractive as a career option, not just a fall-in option, not just a student placement kind of option, a real career option, and that does include challenging those wage perceptions, I think, as well.
So I think I'll just ask Richard a last question before we have to wind up, because Fran makes a very good point there about the STEM agenda. You must be quite close to governments and to the powers to be. Actually, the tourism business, the hospitality sector is a STEM industry. There's science in the food, there's innovation everywhere, technology everywhere. How do we try and bring an understanding to governments that it is a STEM industry?
Yeah, I mean, it was an issue that was, the skills issue was something that was on the government agenda back in the before days when we had the industrial strategy. As part of that, there's a report that we've got up on our website about productivity in tourism and how and why productivity is so low, why wages are so low in tourism. I'd encourage you to take a look at that. I mean, there are some thoughts there on, for example, apprenticeships, collaborative partnerships, potential solutions. But it was a challenge a few years ago, and it's even more now.
Well, again, it's a shame we're ending on a little bit of a depressed note, because we've got everything, all our ducks are in a row. We've got the offer in Central South. So just let me wind up what I think I've learned today. People, planet, profits. I'm going to go away with that, Danny. That is brilliant. I really love that. And I think everyone talked about that in their own way. Food and drink, it's at the very, it's at key to our tourism offer. Just to tell you that if you didn't know already, that Business South are actually doing a local produce show on the 30th of September at the Aegis Bowl in Southampton. Might be worth popping in there. You'll probably see lots of the suppliers to Danny and Amy and co there. And thank you to all of our speakers, to our panelists for popping in at the end and really contributing. Thank you to our partners, Waverley, Guildford and Surrey Heath Borough Councils, and Basing, Stoke and Dean in North Hampshire Borough Council. And thank you to our audience for joining us this afternoon and from hearing from these spectacular speakers and panelists. Thank you very much, everybody, and goodbye.
Thank you.